The unfinished story, love, secrets, and the immortal narrative. Before I get into the story, you need to understand that what happened wasn't sudden. It wasn't one of those explosive endings with screaming, betrayal, and doors slamming. No. This unraveling was like watching a thread being pulled from a tightly knit sweater. So slowly, you almost don't notice until suddenly there's nothing left but a heap of yarn and a memory of what used to be whole. It began 5 years ago in a sleepy coastal town where the waves whispered secrets, and the air always smelled faintly of salt and longing. I was 29, working remotely as a UX designer for a startup in Berlin, though I had fled the city after a long, exhausting breakup. My previous relationship had chewed through me like a paper straw in a glass of boiling tea, and I wasn't looking for anything serious. Not even close. So when I met her, it didn't feel like a plot point. It felt like an afterthought. She was soft-spoken, graceful, the kind of person who made you lean in to hear her rather than raise her voice. Her name was Elise. She was renting the cottage next to mine, an old white, bricked place with wild roses crawling up the side like they were trying to protect something. She told me she was writing a book, which felt like a cliché. But when I saw her on the porch typing away morning after morning, I started to believe it. What she didn't tell me, not then and not for a very long time, was what the book was about, or that it wasn't fiction at all. We started as neighbors. Casual smiles, occasional conversations about the weather, the fishermen, the moon. Then one night I saw her struggling with her bicycle chain, and I offered to help. It should have ended there. But she invited me for tea. I accepted, and something shifted. It was subtle at first. Our paths started crossing more frequently, with less randomness and more intention. We both pretended it was fate. She brought over lemon cake one afternoon, apologizing for burning the edges. I brought over wine the next week, pretending I'd bought too much. We were two people who had been hurt before, dancing around each other like we were afraid the music might stop. But then it didn't stop. It sped up. Within 2 months, we were sharing late night walks, beach bonfires, stories from childhood, and finally, a bed. It was easy at first, comforting. Her silence wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space I didn't know I craved. She didn't pry, didn't ask me to perform some emotional striptease to prove my worth. I mistook that for security. I mistook that for love. One evening, I asked her about her past. Not rudely, not invasively. I just wanted to know more. She hesitated, then smiled that sad smile of hers and said, "There's not much worth telling." I let it go. I told myself she would open up when she was ready. I didn't know then that she already had. Just not to me. Time passed. Seasons shifted. Her lease ended, and she moved in. We rearranged furniture, routines, and morning playlists. She stopped writing as much, said the book was almost done. I celebrated that for her, proud in a way I didn't fully understand. She didn't want to show it to me yet. Said it was too personal, too raw. I didn't push. I should have. That was the first clue. The second came in the form of a letter. Not a modern letter. An actual envelope, handwritten, sealed with wax like something from another century. I found it on the kitchen table one day while she was out. I wasn't snooping. It was just there. My name wasn't on it, but hers was. The address was from a prison. I wish I could say I respected her privacy and put it down. But I didn't. I read it. The letter was from someone named Jonah. The words were desperate, poetic, and hauntingly intimate. They spoke of memories I didn't share, nights I couldn't have lived, promises I hadn't made, and a child. A son. His name was Aiden, 4 years old. The math didn't work. Not unless Elise had been pregnant the year before we met. Not unless she had hidden an entire human being from me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't confront her immediately. I couldn't. Instead, I kept it inside, like a secret tumor pressing against my ribs. I watched her with new eyes. The way she'd sometimes stare into nothing, like her mind was replaying something she couldn't let go of. The way she avoided calls, kept her phone face down, turned away from certain questions like they were too sharp. I told myself there had to be an explanation, something reasonable and clean. But I knew better. You don't hide your child unless the truth is worse than the lie. I began to change after that. Subtle, like she had changed me first. I became distant, suspicious, a little colder. She noticed. She asked if something was wrong. I lied, said I was stressed about work. She cooked more, hugged more, made love like she was trying to hold something together that she couldn't name. I kept waiting for her to tell me, to confess. But she never did. Instead, a week later, she said she was going away for a few days. To visit my sister, she claimed. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, watched her drive away. Then I followed her, not immediately. I'm not a villain, just a man unraveling. I waited an hour, then got in my car and took the highway. Her sister lived inland in a town called Merrow Ridge, but Elise didn't drive that way. She took the coast road, the long one, past the cliffs. I stayed far enough behind not to be seen. We drove for over 2 hours. Then she pulled into a gravel driveway outside an old brick house with a red door and overgrown ivy. I parked up the road, watched as she knocked. The door opened. A boy ran into her arms. He couldn't have been older than 5. He called her Mama. That was the moment everything broke. Not in anger, not in rage, but in this slow, suffocating heartbreak that doesn't leave room for breath or logic or mercy. I didn't confront her then, either. I drove back home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the porch until the sun rose and birds began singing songs that sounded cruel in their cheerfulness. When she returned 2 days later, smiling like everything was normal, I finally asked her. I didn't mention the house or the boy. I just asked, "Is there anything you need to tell me?" She paused, bit her lip, shook her head. No, nothing. That was when I knew the truth was never going to come from her lips, only from her pages. I waited until she was asleep. Then I opened her manuscript. The first chapter began. Oh, this is the story of the man I loved, the one I killed, and the child I almost never knew. I didn't sleep at all that night. The line echoed in my mind like a bell struck once but never silenced. The man I loved, the one I killed. Over and over, a ghost sentence with no context, no ending, only the violent suggestion of something irreversible. I read the words again under the weak light of the kitchen, flipping through her manuscript page by page, searching not just for answers but for her. The her I thought I knew, the her I lived with, the her I loved. But the Elise in these pages was someone else entirely. Untethered, haunted, raw, and tangled in a darkness I never saw coming. The book wasn't a novel, it was a confession. Not just a confession, but a chronology of 2 lives. Hers and this man Jonah, the father of the boy. It started with poetry, slow, lyrical descriptions of the first time she met him. He was a street artist, painting murals without permission on abandoned buildings. She was 19, running from a home she never named. They met on a wet summer night under a bridge in Warsaw. The first chapters unfolded like a romance. Wild, doomed, intoxicating. He was older, magnetic in that way dangerous men sometimes are. Their love spiraled fast, full of graffiti, stolen train rides, and whispered dreams under peeling ceilings. But there was something else. A storm brewing behind his words, a temper, an edge, a paranoia she dismissed at first, until she couldn't. The turning point came halfway through the pages, a chapter titled Red Snow. It wasn't clear what happened exactly, but it described an argument turned violent, glass breaking, her crawling through the shards, his voice a slurred animal growl, and then silence, no direct admission, just imagery. I held the knife like a paintbrush, but the canvas didn't end. It pulsed, it screamed. And then it bled out the truth. I had to pause after reading that. I felt cold. Her words were too visceral to be metaphor, too precise to be fiction. She wrote of panic, running, erasing footprints, the metallic scent of fear. Then, I didn't bury him. I left him there. Sometimes I wonder if I killed him or if the city did. The next few chapters were about hiding, changing names, leaving Warsaw. She described the birth of her son as both punishment and miracle. She never once mentioned Jonah's death directly again. Instead, the story shifted to escape, First Poland, then small towns, kutches of strangers, eventually finding the coast, where she could breathe, where she could write, and where, eventually, she found me. I closed the manuscript just before dawn, my fingers trembling, my thoughts broken into 1,000 mismatched puzzle pieces. I couldn't look at her the same way again, but I also couldn't look away. Was she a victim, a killer, both? And the boy, Aiden, how much did he know? How much did he carry from a life he hadn't chosen? That morning, she made coffee like she always did, humming under her breath, barefoot in her old blue robe. I watched her from the hallway, heart in my throat, waiting for the courage to speak, to ask, to confront. I didn't. I let the silence grow like moss. Days passed. Then weeks. I kept the secret like it was mine, watched her every move, listened for tremors in her voice, analyzed her sentences for clues. She seemed lighter somehow, freer, as if finishing the manuscript had exorcised something dark. But for me, that darkness had just arrived. I began dreaming of him, Jonah, though I'd never seen his face. In my sleep, he stood behind Elise, blood pouring from his chest, whispering things I couldn't hear. I started keeping a knife under the bed. I changed the locks when she went out. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I was afraid of what I might do. Then something happened that forced everything to the surface. A knock at the door. It was mid-January, a gray, angry day with clouds like bruises. Elise was in the shower. I opened the door. 2 men stood there. One in a long wool coat, the other in a denim jacket that didn't suit the weather. Both had the kind of calm that doesn't come naturally. They asked for Elise. I asked who they were. The one in the coat smiled without warmth. Just friends from before. I said she wasn't home. They said they'd wait. I said they couldn't. They handed me a card with no name. Just a number. Said she'd know. When she came out of the bathroom, toweling her hair, I handed it to her. Her face lost all color. She didn't ask who gave it to me. She just whispered, "How long were they here?" I told her. She didn't speak for a long time. Just stared at the card like it was a detonator. Then she said, "We need to go. Pack a bag. Just the essentials." I asked why. She said, "Because it's happening again." That night we left the cottage, no destination, just roads. We drove west, past towns that blurred in the rear view. She didn't speak much. When she did, it was clipped. They found me. I don't know how. Maybe the book, maybe him. I asked what she meant by. She didn't answer. We stopped at a roadside motel with flickering neon and sheets that smelled like mildew. She didn't sleep. Neither did I. In the morning, I confronted her. I told her I'd read the manuscript. She didn't even flinch. Just said, "I wondered when you would." I asked if it was all true. She nodded. Most of it. Some of the details are blurred to protect Aiden. But yes, I asked if she killed Jonah. She looked at me then, really looked. "I don't know," she said. He stopped moving. I didn't check. I ran. I didn't know what to do with that. How do you process the idea that the person you love may have left someone to die? That she kept a son's secret for 5 years? That your entire relationship was built on a partial truth? We stayed on the move. New motels, new names. She taught me how to blend in, how to pay in cash, how to lie without blinking. I should have run, but I didn't. Something kept me tethered to her. Fear maybe, or love twisted into something unrecognizable. Then came the final straw. One night she went out for food. She left me with her phone. She always kept it locked, but that night she forgot. A message popped up from the same number on the card. It said, "He's not dead. He's coming for the boy." That message shattered the fragile reality I was still clinging to. He's not dead. He's coming for the boy. The words crawled down my spine like ice water, paralyzing me in place. I read it over and over again, my mind trying to reject the possibility that everything Elise had written, everything she had confessed, or half confessed, wasn't even the worst of it. He was alive. Jonah. The man she ran from, the man she might have killed, the man who now wanted his son. Until that moment, I had believed, or tried to believe, that her running had ended the story. But it hadn't. It had only paused it, and now someone had pressed play again. I didn't tell her about the message when she returned. I hid it, pretending to scroll through the news. She came in with a plastic bag of sandwiches, smiled faintly, kissed my cheek like we were just a couple on a spontaneous road trip. I wanted to shake her, scream, demand why she never told me, never warned me. But I didn't, not yet. Instead, I waited until she fell asleep. I sat on the edge of the motel bed for hours, listening to the hum of the mini fridge and the occasional thump of plumbing through the walls. I opened her phone again, found more messages from the same number. Some were short. "I know where you are. You can't keep hiding. He deserves to know." While others were fragments of what looked like longer conversations she'd deleted. It wasn't just a threat, it was a pursuit, a slow, patient one, like he'd known all along and was only now closing in. I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't close my eyes without picturing Jonah's face, even though I didn't know what he looked like. My mind filled in the gaps with every nightmare I'd ever had. The next morning, I confronted her. I waited until she sipped her coffee, her guard down. Then I said, "I saw your phone." She froze mid-sip. Her eyes met mine. And there, in that still moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before: resignation. Not guilt, not anger, just quiet surrender. "I figured you would," she said softly. "So he's alive?" I asked. "You didn't kill him?" "No," she said. "I thought I had." But no. He found me a year later. He told me he'd let me go if I left Aiden with him. I refused. I ran again. "And the message?" I asked. "The one that said he's coming for the boy." She nodded. "He's been saying that for years. Sometimes I believe him. Sometimes I think it's just a game. But this time it feels different." "What didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because you would have left," she said. "And because the moment you know something like this, you can never unknow it. It stains everything. I wanted to protect you from that." "What about Aiden?" I asked. "Where is he?" "Safe," she said. "He's with someone I trust. A woman who helped me disappear before. Jonah doesn't know where she is." I stood up, pacing the small room, heart pounding. "We can't keep running," I said. "Eventually, he'll find you." She looked at me with tired eyes. "I know." "Then let's go to the police." She gave a sad smile. "And say what? That the man I thought I killed didn't die and is now sending vague threats years later. That I faked my identity and ran across countries with a child. You think they'd help me? Or take Aiden from me?" I didn't answer. Because she was right. Every option felt like a trap. We stayed another 2 nights in that motel, sleeping in shifts, locking everything, checking the parking lot for unfamiliar cars. I kept her phone hidden in my bag, afraid she might start deleting again. On the 3rd night, I woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside. I peeked through the curtain. A car had pulled into the lot. Black, tinted windows, not local plates. A man stepped out. Tall, leather jacket. Moved like he wasn't in a rush. He looked up at our window, stared, then turned and walked into the office. I woke Elise. "He's here," I whispered. Her eyes widened, and for a second I thought she might scream. But instead, she moved quickly. "Out the back," she said. We grabbed our things and slipped through the bathroom window, shoes in hand, breath tight. The motel backed into a wooded slope. We scrambled up it, slipping on wet leaves, heartbeats thudding like war drums. I didn't look back. Neither did she. We ran until our lungs gave out. We made it to a service road. I flagged down a truck. A grizzled man with a dog in the passenger seat stopped. I lied and said we'd been chased by a drunk ex. He let us in without questions, drove us 40 miles north. We got out at a diner and sat there for hours, pretending to eat, pretending to breathe. Elise was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion, from the weight of a decade of running finally collapsing in on her. "He's not going to stop," I said. "You know that now, right?" She nodded. "Then we have to end it, Bot." "How?" she whispered. I thought about that for a long time. Then I called a friend from my past. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Back when I was still in Berlin, I worked on a cybersecurity project for a private firm. We dabbled in surveillance counterintelligence, things most people don't even know exist. He owed me a favor. I told him everything. Not Elise's name, not Aiden's. Just enough said he'd find Jonah, and he did. 3 days later, I got an encrypted message. Target confirmed. He's been tracking her through metadata on her manuscript uploads. He's in Grayford. That was 2 towns south of where we'd been. We were lucky. He was close, but not close enough. I shared the message with Elise. We have a window, I said, but we need bait. She looked at me like I just handed her a loaded gun. You want to lure him? Wes, I said, and trap him. Get leverage, or at least get him to stop. And what if it goes wrong? Then it ends, one way or another. We planned for days. Created fake location data, a burner account, dropped hints online through forums she knew he watched. It was risky, but it worked. He took the bait, he responded. I knew you couldn't stay hidden forever. That message was followed by coordinates, a meeting place, midnight, an abandoned warehouse by the pier. Classic. Elise didn't want me to come. I didn't listen. We wired ourselves with hidden mics. My friend would be listening in. If anything went wrong, he'd have a team close by. Elise walked into that warehouse like a ghost returning to the place she died. I stayed hidden in the rafters, heart in my throat, fingers on my phone ready to call for help. Jonah stepped from the shadows. Taller than I imagined. Beard. Scar under his eye. He didn't look angry. He looked triumphant. I always knew you'd come back, he said. You left me to die. You were killing me, she said. Every day. Where's my son? He asked. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want what's mine. He's not yours, she said. You lost that right. You don't get to decide that. He raised his voice then. I raised him for a year before you vanished. He said my name before he said yours. That was the moment I realized. Jonah wasn't chasing revenge. He was chasing control. Ownership, like Aiden was property, a trophy. My hand trembled as I dialed the emergency trigger on the mic. I heard footsteps behind me. Backup had arrived. Below, Elise stood her ground. You're never getting him, she said. Not while I'm breathing. Then maybe. Jonah said, pulling something from his coat. I'll fix that first. But before he could aim, the warehouse flooded with light. Armed men stormed in. He was tackled, pinned, screaming Elise's name like a curse and a plea. She collapsed when it was over. I ran to her, held her. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "It's done." But we were both wrong. It wasn't done. Because the real twist didn't come until a week later, when the team went through Jonah's phone. There in his messages were dozens of conversations, some about Elise, some about Aiden, but one name kept showing up. Over and over, a woman named Mara. The same woman Elise had trusted to protect her son. The woman she swore Jonah didn't know. The woman who, as it turned out, had never been a stranger at all. The discovery of Mara's name in Jonah's messages hit harder than any blow he could have thrown. For days, Elise sat in stunned silence, her eyes vacant, her thoughts trapped somewhere unreachable. I had seen her bruised, terrified, exhausted. But never like this. There was a kind of grief that only betrayal unlocks, and she was drowning in it. She didn't speak Mara's name for 3 days. Not once. She wouldn't say it out loud as though giving it breath would make it real. I let her be. I cleaned the dishes she didn't eat from, changed the motel sheets that still carried her scent, watched her curl tighter every night into a shape smaller than the day before. And every minute that passed, one question screamed louder in my mind. Where was Aiden? We had assumed until then that he was safe. That Mara had protected him all these years, hidden him in the countryside, away from curious eyes and dangerous names. Elise had been so sure. She had told me the woman was loyal, that they'd survived too much together. That Mara had once pulled her bleeding from a bathtub after Jonah's last rage, that she'd helped Elise cross borders, forge documents, and breathe again. So to find Mara exchanging messages with Jonah, not just recently but for years, wasn't just betrayal. It was revelation. Aiden had never been safe. Not really. My contact from Berlin, the one who helped us locate Jonah, sent over the recovered threads. It turned out Maura had first reached out to Jonah 3 years ago. Not out of malice, not exactly, but for money. Life had been hard, funds were drying up, and Maura knew where the boy was. Jonah had been clever. He hadn't taken Aiden immediately. He waited, asked for photos, proof, progress reports. He slowly stitched his way back into the picture without alerting Elise. She didn't know it, but all those birthday videos she thought only Maura had watched. Jonah had watched too. He had heard Aiden's voice, had seen him smile, had even sent him gifts, pretending they were from a distant aunt. I trusted her, Elise finally said, sitting at the foot of the bed, her voice cracked from disuse. I trusted her with my child. I left him with the woman who almost got me killed. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just sat beside her, letting the silence stretch like a wound that refused to close. We had no choice now. We had to find Aiden ourselves. We traced Maura's last known location to a rural village outside Lublin. A quiet, forgettable place, the kind that doesn't show up on digital maps unless you already know what you're looking for. My contact warned us not to go alone. Maura's dangerous, he said. Not with weapons, with her words. She knows how to vanish, how to make you believe you're the one who's wrong. But Elise insisted. I need to look her in the eyes, she said. I need to see what she did to us. So we went. The village was surrounded by fog when we arrived. Rows of crooked fences, chickens pecking in the mud, faces that disappeared behind curtains when we passed. Maura's house was at the end of a gravel road, hidden behind trees heavy with dew. It was small, one story, with ivy strangling the walls and smoke curling lazily from the chimney. For a moment, it looked peaceful, but something about it felt wrong, too still. I wanted to go in first. Elise refused. If she sees you first, she'll lie. She always lies to strangers. So Elise walked up the porch and knocked. The door creaked open almost instantly, as if someone had been waiting. Maura stood there barefoot, her hair longer than Elise remembered, her face thinner, older. But her eyes were exactly the same, sharp, unreadable, blue as ice. Elise, she said, like nothing had happened. Elise didn't answer. She just looked past her into the shadows of the house. Where is he? She asked. Maura's lips twitched into a soft smile. Out with friends. Elise's fists clenched. Friends you picked. Or ones Jonah did? Maura didn't blink. Does it matter? He's safe. That was the moment I stepped in, unable to stay quiet. It matters if you sold him to a man who nearly killed her. Maura turned to me slowly. Hey, you're the new shadow. Elise trusted you, I said. She also trusted Jonah once, Maura said, voice calm. We all make mistakes. Elise's voice cracked then. You knew. All this time. You knew he was alive. You knew where he was. I did, Maura admitted. And I still do. That's when I noticed it. Her hands were trembling. It wasn't confidence she wore. It was exhaustion. Maura wasn't the villain. She was someone who had reached her limit and then crawled past it. She wasn't proud of what she'd done, but she'd done it anyway. I couldn't afford to run anymore, she said. I had debts, health problems. You disappeared, Elise. You left me with a child and no plan. What was I supposed to do? You could have told me, Elise whispered. I couldn't, Maura said. Because I knew you'd take him, and then Jonah would come, and you'd both vanish again. I needed him to stay. For me. For stability, I needed something real. The words hung in the air like poison. Where is he? Elise repeated. Maura didn't answer. So we searched the house, room by room. Photographs of Aiden were everywhere. On the fridge, on the bookshelves, on a small desk, scrawled crayon drawings signed with a heart. But no child, no shoes, no toys. The house was clean. Too clean. Then, finally, in the smallest bedroom, we found a note, scrawled in childish letters. Mama, Auntie said we're going on a trip. She said not to tell you. But I want to see you soon. I miss you. It was dated 2 weeks ago. Elise collapsed to her knees. Mara watched from the hallway, tears streaming down her face. He's with Jonah now. I don't know where. I swear I don't. Jonah picked him up the night before you caught him in Greyford. He took him before we could stop it. I thought he'd bring him back. I didn't know. Elise lunged at her, screaming, crying, clawing, until I pulled her off, and Mara just stood there, letting it happen, like she knew she deserved it. That night, we didn't sleep. We sat in our car, parked outside Mara's house, listening to the wind scratch at the windows. Elise didn't cry anymore. She just stared forward, empty-eyed. He has him, she said. He has my son. He has the only thing that matters. And now we'll take him back, I said. No matter what it takes. But deep down, we both knew. Jonah had always been 10 steps ahead. He had waited for years. He had tracked her movements, tricked her friends, watched from the shadows. He was patient, calculating, relentless. And now he had what he wanted. Not just the child, but the leverage. The next day, my phone lit up. Unknown number, no caller ID, I answered. His voice was low, calm, smiling. Hello, Jonah said. Would you like to hear your son's voice? The moment I heard Jonah's voice, the world tilted. I had prepared for this, imagined it 100 ways. Him calling, gloating, making demands. But nothing prepares you for the voice of a man who's holding a child you love. There was a pause on the line, static crackling faintly. Then, in the background, a soft murmur, a small, uncertain voice. Mama. That single word fractured Elise. She lunged for the phone like it was a lifeline, gripping it so tightly her knuckles whitened. Aiden, she gasped. It's me, sweetheart. Are you okay? Can you tell me where you are? But the line had already gone silent. Jonah had cut it, as if the boy's voice was never meant to bring comfort. Just a wound, proof that he held the power now. Elise crumpled to the motel floor, her face buried in her hands, her sobs raw and deep and wordless. I sat beside her, helpless, filled with a rage I didn't know what to do with. Jonah had Aiden. He had called us. And now we had nothing. No clue where he was, no path forward, just a terrible new truth: he wasn't done playing. Later that day, the second call came. This time, Jonah didn't pretend. His voice was measured, rehearsed. I want to meet, he said. You'll come alone. No games, no tech. Just you. If I see your boyfriend or anyone else, I disappear with the boy. You'll never find us. You have no right, Elise said. He's my son. Jonah chuckled. He's mine too. And frankly, I think he's better off with someone who doesn't make a habit of disappearing. He gave her coordinates. An old dockyard outside Krakow 2 nights from now, midnight. Come alone, he repeated, and don't be late. When the call ended, Elise turned to me with eyes that burned. I'm going. I nodded. Oh, then I'm coming too. No, she said. He's watching, he always is. If he sees you, he'll vanish. And if he vanishes with Aiden, she couldn't finish. But I understood. We didn't argue. There was no point. She had already made up her mind. But what she didn't know, what I didn't tell her, was that I had no intention of staying behind. I couldn't, not now. The next 48 hours were agony. Elise barely spoke, her mind entirely focused on what she'd say, how she'd act, how she'd get our son. Yes, by then I had stopped pretending he wasn't mine too. I watched her pace for hours, rehearse lies, imagine scenarios. Sometimes she talked to herself. Sometimes she said Aiden's name like a prayer. I spent that time in a different way. I called in the last favor I had. My contact from Berlin, Matteo. He was ex-military, now a freelancer for people like me, people desperate for invisible help. I gave him the location, asked him to set up eyes everywhere, drones, thermal scanners, snipers if needed. Just find the boy, I said. Don't shoot unless you have to. I want him alive. I want him to see her face when she takes her son back. The night of the meeting, Elise dressed in black, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked like someone prepared to bleed. I followed her at a distance, 2 blocks behind, staying in shadow, relaying her every move to Matteo. The dockyard was abandoned, rotting wood and rusted metal, puddles that reflected the moon like broken glass. Jonah was already there, standing by a derelict shipping container, Aiden by his side. The boy looked small, confused, clutching a stuffed bear with one missing eye. Elise stepped into the floodlight. Jonah raised a hand to shield his eyes. "You came?" he said. "Of course I came," Elise replied. "He's my son." "Is he?" Jonah said, looking down at Aiden. "Or is he just your escape story?" Elise took a slow step forward. "You don't have to do this." "I didn't have to do anything," Jonah said. "But you left me with nothing. You erased me. You made me into a villain so you could be the survivor. You rewrote the story." Elise's voice trembled. "Because you made me afraid. You hurt me. You threatened him." "I loved you," he said, and his voice cracked. "I built a life around you, and you walked out like it was nothing." She shook her head. "You built a cage, Jonah. I just finally found the door." There was a pause. A long one. Aiden looked between them, nervous, unsure. "Mama," he whispered. Elise knelt. "I'm here, baby. I've always been here." "Why did you leave me?" Elise choked. "I didn't, sweetheart. I promise. I sent you somewhere safe. I thought you'd be okay." Jonah narrowed his eyes, touching. "Really? But this isn't a reunion. This is a negotiation. But what do you want?" Elise asked. "You," he said. "You come with me. No police, no running. We disappear together, you and like before. Like you give me that, and I give you Aiden." Elise blinked. "That's not love," she said. "That's ransom." Jonah shrugged. "Call it what you want. It's the only way you see him again." Elise stood. For a moment, I thought she'd give in. Thought she'd offer herself like some tragic heroine. But then she said, "No baw." Jonah's face darkened. "Then we walk," he said, gripping Aiden's shoulder. That's when Matteo made his move. From the top of the crane, the drone's high, pitched hum gave away its presence. Jonah flinched. Matteo's voice crackled through a speaker. "Put the boy down. You're surrounded." Jonah grabbed Aiden and pulled a knife from his belt. "You lied," he screamed at Elise. "You always lie." I ran. Out of cover, across gravel and water, slick boards. Elise screamed. Matteo's team moved in from 3 sides. Jonah held the blade to Aiden's throat. "I swear," he shouted, but before he could finish, Elise did something unthinkable. She walked toward him, slowly, hands up, crying. "Take me," she said. "Leave him. I won't fight. Just let him go." Jonah hesitated, just long enough. Matteo's tranquilizer dart hit his neck like a whisper. Jonah staggered, dropped the knife, dropped to one knee. Aiden scrambled away, right into Elise's arms. Jonah slumped over unconscious. I reached them seconds later. Elise held Aiden like she might never let go. He clung to her, sobbing. "I missed you," he said. "I thought you were gone." "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm never leaving again." It was over. Or so we thought. Jonah was taken into custody under a false identity. Matteo arranged for a quiet detainment. No headlines, no trial, no questions. We disappeared again, this time together. Elise, Aiden, and me. A family in hiding, yes, but a family. Months passed. We moved to a village in the mountains, changed our names, enrolled Aiden in a local school. He made friends. He laughed again. Elise began to write. Not about the past, but about futures. She smiled more. We healed. But healing is never total. One day, Aiden came home with a drawing. A picture of a man with a scar under his eye. "Who's this?" Elise asked. Aiden looked at her. "That's my friend. He visits me sometimes." "At night?" Elise froze. "What does he say?" Aiden thought for a second. "He says to tell you thank you." "Thank you for what?" Aiden smiled. "For finishing the story." Elise and I exchanged a glance. The scar. The dreams. The way Aiden had drawn the man's hand holding a pen, not a weapon. And then it hit me. Jonah hadn't just wanted his son. He wanted his legacy. And now he was writing it. Through Aiden. It's strange how a story doesn't always end where the danger stops. We'd escaped the shadow of Jonah. At least we thought we had. He was locked away in an undisclosed facility somewhere in Eastern Europe, sedated and monitored. Aiden was safe. Elise was healing. We were rebuilding something close to normal, but normal was a fragile illusion held together by silence and denial. And silence doesn't erase the past, it echoes it, especially in the mind of a child. At first, we dismissed Aiden's visits from Jonah as leftover trauma, nightmares manifesting as conversations. Elise reassured him gently each night, kissed his forehead, told him the bad man was gone. But the drawings kept coming. They grew more detailed, more vivid. Aiden had never seen Jonah in daylight after the rescue. And yet, he was sketching things he shouldn't know, the chipped bone in Jonah's left hand from a street fight Elise had told no one about. The cracked watch Jonah always wore, a gift from his father, long broken but never discarded. These weren't dreams. They were memories, borrowed or implanted. Either way, they were growing. One afternoon, I came home to find Aiden sitting at the kitchen table, carefully copying something into a notebook. Elise was in the garden. The TV was off. There were no toys around, just him, a pencil, and a strangely focused expression. "What are you writing?" I asked. He smiled without looking up. "My story." "What's it about?" "It's about a man who loses everything," he said, "but he finds a new way to speak to people, even when they stop listening." I didn't know what to say. That evening I told Elise. She went pale, then immediately searched the notebook. Page after page of neatly written paragraphs. Some were nonsense, childish fantasy. Others weren't. Some were memories she had buried. Descriptions of places only Jonah had been. Phrases he used when angry. A letter he once wrote her that she had burned before Aiden was born. He had memorized it word for word. But that wasn't possible. Unless Jonah had found a way in. We had always assumed the bond between Jonah and Aiden was blood, biology. But it went deeper. Elise had carried Aiden while on the run. While immersed in fear, trauma, and survival, Jonah had been present in every heartbeat, every whispered name, every mental replay of violence. That kind of imprint doesn't vanish, it settles. It shapes. We tried to stop it. We took away the notebooks, limited screen time, changed bedtime routines. We introduced drawing games, stories about animals, laughter, light. But it didn't work. Aiden kept writing, not just with pencils, on fogged mirrors, in the sand, in chalk on the sidewalk. Always the same figure. A man with a scar, a pen in his hand, a knowing smile. Matteo checked in from time to time, making sure we were safe. When we told him what was happening, he listened carefully, then asked for samples. Pages of Aiden's writing. "I'll compare it," he said, "to the original letters from Jonah." A week later, Matteo called. "It's not just similar," he said. "It's identical. Sentence structure, tone, even spelling quirks. It's like Jonah's writing through him." Elise broke down that night. "I didn't escape him," she whispered. "I carried him. Into our son. Into our future. I didn't believe in the supernatural. Still don't. But what was happening couldn't be explained by logic alone. Aiden wasn't just remembering things. He was channeling something, a presence, a residue. Trauma leaves fingerprints, and Jonah's were everywhere. One morning, I found a new note under my pillow, written in a childish hand, but in words too deliberate to be Aiden's. "You think cages end men like me." Elise found another, folded into the pages of her old manuscript. "You turned me into a villain because you couldn't handle being the broken one." Oh, we moved again. Changed names, towns, routines. It didn't matter. The messages followed. Elise began having dreams of Jonah, yes, but not violent, intimate. He would sit across from her, calmly reading pages of her book, critiquing her writing, asking about Aiden. "Has he forgiven you yet?" he'd say. She began to question herself, her memory, the truth. "What if I was the one who ruined him?" she asked one night. "What if I pushed him to become this?" That was Jonah's greatest weapon, doubt. Not fists, not threats, but planting the idea that maybe it was never entirely his fault, that maybe the villainy was shared. I decided to burn the manuscript. Every copy, every backup. But before I could, Aiden found it. He cried when I tried to take it from him. Screamed, actually. thrashed like something primal had taken over. "Don't kill the story," he shouted. "It's the only way he stays alive." We froze. "He," Elise whispered. "Aiden," I said gently, kneeling. "Why do you want him to stay alive?" "Because," Aiden sniffled. "He promised if I finished the ending, he'd stop talking." That night, we sat with Aiden, the three of us, around the kitchen table. Elise held his hand. I placed a fresh notebook in front of him. "Tell us," I said. "Finish the story." And he did. He wrote for hours, in silence. Pages and pages of clean, sharp handwriting far beyond his years. It wasn't just a story. It was a confession. From Jonah, through Aiden. Every unspoken truth, every thought Jonah had never said aloud. His loves, his hatred, his pain. The boy he once was, the man he became. And the final sentence chilled me. I never wanted to hurt her. But if I couldn't live in her world, I'd live in her memory. Aiden handed us the notebook and fell asleep. Like the storm had passed. Like he'd finally put something down. The next morning, he didn't mention Jonah. Not once. He played with his toys, asked for pancakes, laughed at cartoons, like a regular child. The drawings stopped. The dreams ended. The notebooks remained blank. Elise cried for an hour in the shower. We kept the notebook, locked it in a safe, just in case. Years passed. Aiden grew. We told him the truth slowly, in fragments, gentle pieces, about Jonah, about his mother's strength. He listened. He never asked to read the notebook again. Until one day, at 17, he did. He read it in silence, closed it, and said, "I'm going to write a new story." He left for university a year later, studying psychology. Trauma, specifically. Wanted to help people rebuild. Wanted to understand memory, how it sticks, how it poisons, how it heals. Elise and I watched him go with a strange pride and a deeper fear. Because some stories don't end, they echo. He calls us every Sunday. He's happy, I think. But sometimes, in the background of the call, I hear the scratch of a pen, the turning of a page, a silence too thick to be empty. And once, just once before hanging up, I thought I heard him whisper, "I miss him." How was he talking about Jonah? Or the version of himself that still belonged to him? I don't know. And maybe I never will. But I've learned this. Some people leave fingerprints on your skin. Others leave them on your soul. And some write themselves so deeply into your story, they become the twist you never saw coming. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.